Well, comments by the German Chancellor about the U.S. and its war against Iran have drawn the ire of the U.S. president. Now, yesterday, Chancellor Merz accused the U.S. of having no strategy in the conflict, and he said Iran's leadership was humiliating the U.S. Today, President Trump fired back on his Truth Social platform. Trump wrote, "The Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, thinks it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. He doesn't know what he's talking about. If Iran had a nuclear weapon, the whole world would be held hostage." Also today, the German foreign minister defended the chancellor. Johann Wadephul said that the chancellor's words were meant as a warning to Tehran. That's right. Wadephul is in New York holding meetings at the United Nations on Iran. The head of our Berlin bureau, Max Hofmann, asked the foreign minister if the chancellor's comments will hurt relations with the U.S.
No, this was a clear warning to Tehran, and not to misunderstand the whole situation. The U.S. has still assembled a lot of military equipment around Iran. We are now in a ceasefire situation, fortunately, but this time has to be used also by Tehran. And what we currently see is that Tehran is playing for time and not really negotiating in a way which is necessary and which is needed.
But, I mean, the word, and you know Donald Trump, the U.S. president, and his administration, chances are the term humiliate is not going to go down well there. Do you think it's the right choice of words?
No, it was addressing the behavior of Iran, and it's a bad behavior, what Iran is right now doing. And they are, as I said, misunderstanding their position and overplaying their role. So this is what the Chancellor has said.
All right, DW's Max Hoffman, he joins us now from New York. Max, good to see you. So let's get this right. The German chancellor says that Iran is humiliating the U.S. Trump fires back and says that Friedrich Merz doesn't know what he's talking about. And then the German foreign minister tells you that the chancellor was actually sending a warning to Tehran. Is this a case of lost in translation? I mean, how do you make sense of it?
It's possible. I know at least we have the German official position now, thanks to that interview with the German foreign minister, that this was a warning towards Tehran, as in warning not to overplay their hand in the negotiations, because the way they were negotiating with the U.S. taking a step towards them, at least that's the interpretation that we heard here, humiliating the U.S. by not accepting anything what was proposed there. Of course, Brenton, you know that just as well as anybody, there is a chance that what the German chancellor said could be interpreted very differently, as in the U.S. is being humiliated on the battlefield, or the U.S. is being humiliated because the country is not achieving its goals there, and because nothing much really has changed on the ground in Iran when it comes to regime change or even the opening up of the Strait of Hormuz. And so really this necessitated, in a way, an explanation from the German government. We got it. The question is, does the U.S. president believe it? Does he take it into account? And to be very clear here, we don't know officially whether the post that you just quoted was related to what the German chancellor said, but at least here in New York, a lot of people think so, and I think it's very clear through that post that the U.S. president feels that the German chancellor is at the very least not in his camp here.
And also another clarification, Max, the German chancellor does not really think it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, does he? I mean, that's what the president is claiming in his social media post today.
No, I think we can very clearly say that's not the case. The whole German governing coalition has repeatedly said that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. So that part of that post is misinformed at the very least.
And Max, when you take all these things and put them together, I mean, how would you describe then the state of the relationship currently between Berlin and Washington when it comes to the war against Iran?
Well, over time, the German government has become more outspoken when it comes to the war in Iran and what the United States and Israel also are doing there. And it varies, depending on who you speak to in Berlin. There are some very forceful comments on this, but what we hear basically from all sides is that the German government believes there is no strategy to this war, and it's making things very complicated with no end in sight and no end game really in sight, and also no plan how any kind of goals should be achieved, either through military means or through diplomacy, which of course here in New York City at the United Nations is always a big topic. And you might have noticed that the United Nations haven't been really involved in this conflict at all. Something that would have been unthinkable even 5 or 6 years ago, that the United Nations wouldn't be more heavily involved in something like this.
Speaking of the role of the United Nations, the German foreign minister, he's also using this visit to lobby for a German seat on the UN Security Council. Now, Max, why is that such a priority for Berlin right now? And realistically, I mean, what are the chances that we're going to see that kind of reform happening at the UN?
Well, it wouldn't require reform because the Germans right now are lobbying for a non-permanent seat on the Security Council, and you have 10 states that are continuously changing every 2 years that are on the Security Council, so not to be confounded with the permanent members of the Security Council that also have the veto rights, which are the US, China, Russia, France, and the United Kingdom. So Germany has never given up on that, but right now they are campaigning for a non-permanent seat, which would start in 2027. It's hard to say how the chances are because it's a very complicated institutions, but the Germans themselves feel quite confident that they can achieve this goal. And the German foreign minister here had a lot of talks in that respect, a lot of bilateral talks as well. He spoke to representatives of the African Union, for example, which is the largest voting bloc with 55 countries being part of the United Nations here, so they could very well swing the vote in favor of Germany. But these things are very much in motion, and we're going to have to wait until the beginning of June to see how the vote goes.
All right, our very own Max Hofmann with the latest from New York. Busy schedule there as well. Max, thank you.